All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 11:30 a.m. breakout session. As a reminder, for continuing education credit, please make sure your name is correct on your Zoom login. And as always, there will be a poll at the end of this session for you to take, and we'll announce that prior to it coming up. In addition, at the close of the last session today, we'll be giving away door prizes. You must be present in the Zoom meeting during that time in order to win. You don't want to miss out today because there's going to be some really awesome prizes given away. Also, be sure to check out the NCAUG merchandise on the conference page. All proceeds go to the scholarship funds. All the sessions within the conference will be recorded and put up on the NCAUG YouTube page after the conference. It does take some time to get those to upload, so be patient there. They should get there. And with that, I'd like to welcome and thank you for attending the ArcGIS Implementation for Public and Operational Consumption session. Our speaker today is Thomas Tyner. Tom is a Geospatial Solutions Manager for Arora Engineers and Aurora's ArcGIS Indoors subject matter expert with an exceptional 30-year plus history of positive contribution to diverse industries, including aviation, service transportation, transit, and federal, state, and local government agencies. Tom is a GISP, and he served on various industry boards with responsibilities ranging from trustee to president. So we encourage you all to enter any questions that you have in the chat box for Tom, and we'll wait and answer those at the end of the session. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tom. Take it away, Tom.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, and by the bio, I've been around the block for a while. Now I'm focused on indoors. I mean, I've done a lot of work in my career. I started out doing like wetland interpretation, land use, land cover. I got into cadastral mapping, did some work for DOTs for a while, and now I'm in the aviation market. So I've worked my way from outdoors to indoors, and it's pretty exciting. There's new things. What I'm going to show you today is, what we've been doing with supporting Atlanta Airport in an implementation of ArcGIS Indoors. The overall objective of the Indoors would be, just imagine you're arriving at an airport that, with the advances in technology, it can actually tell you where a parking spot is. It can tell you where your gate is. It can give you queuing times from security. That's the ultimate objective. We're setting the foundation in terms of creating data now, but the ultimate objective, for any of these airports is to be able to, alleviate the stress that passengers have as they, enter the airport property and get to their gate and fly out on time. So, we see Indoors as being part of that overall solution. And there's also other verticals that are associated with Indoors, which I'll cover a little bit. There's definitely use cases for like education, and healthcare, for instance. So just a little, overview of what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the history of Atlanta. I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the technical challenge and some tips and tricks for implementing Indoors. I'm not going to get into reviewing every single geoprocessing tool, but you'll see I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on, how you need to format your CAD data, and then some other things related to the GIS feature classes that are created. I'm going to talk about data migration, the creation of points of interest, and the network, which uses the network analyst tools, that are standard out of ArcGIS Enterprise, and then show you a little bit about how it's very easy to configure and deploy both web applications and mobile applications using the Indoors tools. As well as use cases specific to Atlanta, and then what their next steps are. So a little history, Atlanta's been the world's busiest airport, for 2 decades. They recently got knocked off their perch just by COVID. China had taken the lead for this past year, but I'm sure they're going to overthrow that here soon. It is a economic jewel of Georgia, as they say. There's a huge environmental or economic impact, $34 billion worth of economic impact, and they're a huge employer for the overall, Atlanta area. They have a history of a lot of different awards for, infrastructure awards when they're building new terminals, to both, associated with finance and, also innovation. There's over like 250 concessions in the terminal complex itself, not just the concessions, but the whole area. And I'll show you during this presentation, how complex that the overall CPTC is. It's comprised of like 6.8 million square feet of, of available units. And they also have a lot of ways to gain, access to the different concourses. They have a plane train that runs underground, from all of the concourses to the main terminal. They have a sky train that takes you to the RCC, or the rental car center. They have the ability to pick up the MARTA station or the train, as well as ride shares. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that because you go to airports quite often. And all of those things are important. And the indoor solution is not just indoors. There's the ability to actually, connect to outdoor points of interest and things like that as well. And then there is a GIS team within the Office of Strategic Planning. David Wright is the Geospatial Program Manager. Brian Heron is the service coordinator. So he's all things technical related to the architecture and the services. And then they also have two other, folks on board, one being a CAD specialist and the other being a GIS analyst. So that's what makes up their team. And they do have a couple others that we work with as well. So just some of the indoors mapping drivers, like, why indoors? And, this is important for the airport, but it goes across a bunch of different vertical markets. Accessibility. So like for the airport, it's, they have a secure side, obviously, that we don't have public access to, and they have the public side. So, there is a differentiation there. There's security protocols and doors and things like that that need to be monitored and such. And then from a digital delivery standpoint, it's everything from, looking at the entire workflow of keeping that data, that indoors data, up to date. So as a terminal, or a section of the terminal, is redesigned, a lot of times those are coming as a BIM model now. So it's a matter of taking BIM information, the building information models, and converting that into, the indoors units and levels and specific details like walls and things like that, as well as a delivery to just basically serve up the applications, whether it be for public consumption, and or operational. From a security and a safety standpoint, we have life safety. So we have points of interest, right? You want to know where the AEDs are, the fire extinguishers, and, with COVID, where the hand sanitizers are, those types of things, to support overall, asset management. And then you have emergency response, like you need to know, where is the incident? What's the layout of that area? What are the resources, both human resources for those people that are responding to help navigate them to that specific location, as well as maybe some of those life safety pieces of equipment, the AED or the fire extinguisher, depending on what the situation is. And then overall sustainability, asset management is becoming more and more prevalent now. People are, and not just airports, but all different types of agencies are, implementing asset management software, whether it be like a Maximo, a CityWorks, a Cartograph. There's a lot of different systems that are out there for like work order management and such. And, and when I speak about asset management, there's two prongs to that. One would be looking at asset management in terms of the performance and looking at budgeting, like for HVAC systems, for instance, or just the asset management of the daily maintenance of those, specific assets, work orders, service requests, and things like that. We want to improve, we see indoors improving the overall operational efficiency, of those different, asset management tasks by able to quickly navigate, a maintenance worker, or a technician to a specific location, that if they have information specific to the asset that they're, looking at within the GIS environment, they know what, kind of tools they need to bring. All of those are different scenarios, that is of interest, and we see as drivers for indoors, as well as overall space planning, both, space planning in terms of like lease management, consolidation of a couple different lease areas and you're building a new restaurant, and or the office spaces, that are not necessarily, open to the public, manage those spaces efficiently. So what we started out with was a indoors data migration pilot. We did this a couple of years ago. And the purpose of that was really to look at the CAD information that was available and figure out what we need to do in order to convert that to the indoors data model. The objective was to, assess those floor plans, make the enhancements that need to be made. And I'm going to go through some, specific examples of that during this presentation. Test the migration tools, right? Because, the Atlanta basically was the first airport to implement across the country, and probably one of the first, use cases for indoors, clients implementing indoors. And then also we wanted to identify different types of use cases, like, how is this going to benefit the organization? Not just by having another feature class, that's the units or the rooms, but, how is this overall solution going to, help us, serve our business units better? And the results of that, we did some prototyping. So we did the main terminal and 3 of the concourses, as well as a plane train to show connectivity between floors. And we basically spun up a indoors web application, to show that to the division heads, as well as, a mobile solution. And I'll cover some of those things in a few slides. And really the value proposition was, overall for space management, and business operations in general. So just looking at the complexity, and I know it's a little difficult to see, based on this spreadsheet, but this is really the vertical nomenclature, and it takes you a little while to get used to it. All the way on the left is the levels that they're used to referring to, which is like ground is level 1. But if you look all the way on the right-hand side, you got vertical order, and that's how really the indoors is set up. So your ground level would be 0. And these are, I'm just kind of drilling into some of the technical details, but you can see there are, numerous, offices, as well as, boarding areas and, utility circulations and things like that are within this entire complex. So there's, what is it? It's about 10 floors in all. 7 of them are above ground, and then there's 3 of them that are subterranean. So there's a lot going on. So it was a great case study. So just talking about data creation, the ingredients for successful data creation in indoors is, first, if you have BIM models, or CAD, and we were using the CAD files, is reviewing those CAD files and developing a template to map the different CAD layers to those respective feature classes within the indoors data model. As well as defining what are going to be your different points of interest and the ways in which you're going to generate those points of interest. Some come directly from the units based on like a use type. Also associating, symbology, and creating icons. And Esri does have an ever-growing, icon library to support the indoors platform, which is really nice. And one of the main, focus areas for and value of the indoors is basically that it's floor aware. So now it's not just that you have, 3 different floors, 3 different floor plans. If you're going to actually have an application to be able to navigate between those floors and get you from, the first floor to the 3rd floor and know what transitions you're going to take, that's where the value of the indoor solution comes into play. They have the ability to, and I'll show you a little bit about creating a routing network. Okay, so that's where you can get from point A to point B, and talk a little bit about the map services. So here we have, first off, the CAD geometry. So this is really just, high level, CAD enhancement tips and tricks, that I'm going to show you. And one of the things, a heavy lift for the indoors is to make sure that your CAD data, is aligned properly so that it's very easy to convert that information. One of them that streamlines the process is what I'm showing here in the upper left-hand corner is, if we're looking at, just units themselves versus like a leased area, here we have like a restroom area, and then we have a leased area above that. So what you can see is that it's actually sharing the interior wall, and this goes into the calculations of square footage and things like that. And different agencies will have, different methods of calculating that square footage. And also your lease areas may actually, like this area over here, be like just a common area, but that's part of their overall lease and their square footage. So it's very important to be able to appropriately define those areas for conversion, because you don't want to leave basically gaps between the restroom and this, because then you're all of a sudden you're losing all of that square footage. So part of it is actually, creating what I'll call the indoors polygons, right? So we have a layer that was created within the CAD file called indoors poly, and that created these polygons that shared that interior wall and captured the exterior walls. Part of that was is looking at the attribution, or the annotation in CAD. And that's where one of the challenges is. You really look at CAD files are typically text annotation, so it's not really smart. So one of the recommendations was to be able to put that into a block. So what I'm showing here is a representation of a block within the CAD environment. It's showing the room identification is the block, and it brings up all of this specific information related to this unit. So it talks about its American Airlines. It gives what the room number is, and give what the square footage is of that area, whether the access is public or private, that it's a club room, that the exhibit that it was created from was in August of 2020, as well as like the permit or the name of the establishment. But once we get the CAD data aligned, with these blocks, it's easy to now to convert that information and bring that into the GIS units or rooms within the information model. And how do we do that? Okay, so there's a crosswalk. So here is, again, that room identifier. It's giving this information, right? We just saw that on the previous slide. Here is an Excel spreadsheet, which is basically used as a crosswalk between the CAD and the indoors feature classes. So in this example, we have the feature classes going to the units. We are pointing that to the indoors poly layer within the CAD environment. Here we're looking at, we want the unit ID, the name, and the use type. So I say, I basically code in there that it's the A room identifier. It's the second one. So if we come down, this is actually name would be 0, airline is 1, this is 2. So room number is 2, the permit is 6, and the type is 8. And then when you run that, it actually populates the attributes into that feature class, that unit's feature class. And here we have, details, which is all going to be like your architectural details. That could be, the walls, the doors, all of the different furniture, anything that you want to be able to have access to in that details feature class. And then we also have openings as well. So you establish that crosswalk, and then you use that to, import into ArcGIS Indoors through the data conversion process. And the results are, it's the easy button. If your CAD data is set up correctly, it's very easy to run this conversion, to convert your CAD layers into the information model. I'm showing just here an example of like the facilities and the levels that get created, and then you have your units, which are in here. And then the details. So here's all of your, wall areas, furniture, like this is going through security and such. So it easily brings that information across. Additional data development, there are, events that you could, add into it. So you can have events for like meetings or special events and things like that. You can have that accessible within the Indoors platform so that you can navigate someone if they need to go and, this could be the airport, but it could be, your facility as well, a conference room. You could easily navigate them to that conference room, from their specific location. And then we have the different fields, and like the events is like, it's very simple, like an event ID, the name, the start and the end date, and then the unit name. So where you're going to, a description, and you can include like images as well. And then we have, points of interest, and, for the For Atlanta Airport, those points of interest, are numerous and variable. We have like concessions, we have the gates, restrooms, the ticketing counters, different types of transportation modes, such as it can navigate you to the Uber or the Lyft area, or it can take you to the rental car center using the SkyTrain. All of those things are accessible as points of interest to help you navigate once you build the network. And at the end is a configuration table, an Indoors configuration table, and that's really pointing to the URLs of your Indoors portal, and then as well as part of the network, you're creating like a closest facility and a network facility services, which is your routing routine. So just drilling down into the points of interest, right? So we have the ability within, and I'm just showing the ribbon here. You go into view, and there's an Indoors configuration widget now, and that's new. Esri is continuing to enhance the way in which the Indoors platform is actually accessible, and the tools are used within the Indoors framework, which is good. Continued advancements. So here we have the points of interest from the units feature class. So we have a whole bunch of different use types. We could easily configure, at the click of a button, and show these different types of icons associated with a certain concession in this instance. And why we're setting up 3 different, and once again, Esri has a great library for this, why they're set up at different resolutions and for the different platforms. So whether you're using a desktop application or using a mobile application, it'll dynamically change, based on the configuration of your Indoors categories table. And that Indoors categories table is set up, and I'm looking at, on this side, we're all talking about ArcGIS Pro. That's what it's running in. You configure those categories, and then from a visualization standpoint, like I'm showing you within the web app here, you can go to the Explorer, and this is how I set up all of these different icons. And if I click on these icons, it would drill down into more specific information related to those. If I clicked on concessions, it would show me like a food and beverage and maybe a services concession. If I clicked on food and beverage, it would give me a listing of all the different types of concessions that are available within the airport. And there's ways to easily set up the searches. So I can search based on a concession name. So if I wanted to find out where there's a Starbucks, all I do is type in Starbucks there. It'll show me where the different Starbucks that are within the airport. And then it'll also give me other information like what concourse it's in, things like that, and the distance to that, so that you can actually select something that is in close proximity. So that's just a little bit about the points of interest. Now, those are used in creating the overall network. And, here we're looking at the pathways. And there are tools, within the Indoors platform to create a more or less like a lattice that is then used to connect to all of the points of interest. But what we found is that it was taking a while, like when we first started using the Indoors platform, to actually create those lattices. And what we found was that it was actually easier for us, and more productive in the end to create, do like heads up digitizing it and create a center line, through the concourse, and then create your different vertices, and then connecting your vertices to your points of interest. So that way you're assuring that your utility network, or this routing network is going to work correctly, from start to finish, to be able to connect to all your different points of interest. And, there are hundreds of points of interest, that are part of this overall network. And part of this is basically looking at, when we're in here, we want to confirm that all of our vertices are actually on the proper plane, so the proper Z value. So that's that's just a tip and a trick, because you want to make sure that, and that's how you're able to navigate from floor to floor, is by having, these different attributes within the feature class, so that it knows, what's the associated Z value is. And the Z value here is like 4.25, but that's in meters. Here we get into creating network transition. So, we created those pathways. So you just imagine that network from, floor to floor, similar to like a roadway network. Okay. And then we have to create transitions. So your transitions are going to be like your elevators, your escalators, and your stairs. And the way to do that is, through this transition feature class, or our, once again, automated processes to do that. But we found that, from a visual standpoint, as well as just the connectivity, that we just would go in there and actually identify where those different areas are, the elevators and the escalators, and we would create those transitions, from floor to floor. So you're seeing in this specific example, the from level is, concourse A, the ground level, to concourse A level 2. So that's where this specific escalator would go. And that's important to know about that, because those are going to be your modes of travel, from floor to floor. And there is a long list of domains associated with some of these fields. So it's very important to be able to drill in and understand what those domain values are. And one of the tricks is making sure that you're digitizing in the proper direction when you're associating the travel direction as well. What we learned is it's best to go from lower to higher, and that way you're always using the to and from designation for travel direction. Here we have a configuration, or of the Indoors web application. So it's very user friendly. They have a web configuration widget within the Indoors web tool that you use, and it walks you through. It's a widget that walks you through setting up where you're the application that you created, what is the web map you're looking at, what's the routing service, as well as the closest facility. And then there's other tabs, and I don't have those on here, but it basically walks you through, like adding a scale bar. You can link to a third party, do a third party integration. And I did test, this was last year before Field Maps was out, but I did a test to synchronize with Survey 123 and created like a fire inspection or a fire extinguisher inspection. And that worked rather seamlessly. It was a really straightforward, it didn't take that long to do. And the integration was basically seamless, pointing to that URL. So not a programmer, and was able to accomplish that. So that says a lot for Esri and the tools that they're building, is that you don't necessarily need to be a programmer in order to configure these different applications. And part of the configuration is also like the colors within the data frame, so that we have the reds here and the blues, and all of these things is, and all the text, that's all configurable within that web template. You're configuring the ability to explore your POIs, which I talked about, and you can also like configure pop-ups. That's part of the details within the ArcGIS Pro setup of your project, configuring those pop-ups to show the specific attributes that you want within that feature class. And because we created this routing network, we have the ability both to navigate from point to point. It gives you written directions as well as verbal directions. So you can click on the voice command, and it'll actually walk you through each one of the different segments and get you to from point A to point B. And if you do have an IPS or indoor positioning system set up, it would show your blue dot and walk you through the facility. And then there's also part of the solution is to determine, like, if you have ADA compliance and you have somebody in a wheelchair, you actually want to set that wheelchair. That's one of the parameters you can easily set within the Indoors template, to show that as opposed to taking an escalator, you're going to route those individuals to the elevators. I mean, once again, it does have indoor and outdoor support, so it's just not within your specific facility. You just create pathways that you define as outside, and it would follow those two. And the example that I'm showing in the lower right hand corner is basically going from the main terminal complex to that white dot is the rental car facility, and the dashed line is basically following the plane, the SkyTrain. So a similar look and feel for the mobile application. Once again, you're creating in ArcGIS Pro You're basically sharing this out in Portal to create your web map, but you're also, the ability to actually create a mobile map package. You download that mobile map package, and I'm showing the interface here. Looks very similar. You got your Explorer with the same types of icons. You have the same functionality of being able to, navigate from point A to point B, be able to search on different areas. And once again, that enable blue dot, the IPS, the indoor positioning system, if you have that accessible, it would actually show your location via that blue dot on the mobile device. The challenge with the being indoors is obviously outdoors, it's going to be your GPS signal, but indoors, it's going to have to, need to establish an indoor positioning system. And let's see, you can share your location with other individuals. And also you have access in the lower right-hand corner over here, the schedule. You can have access to your schedule. And if you have specific events there, you just click on the schedule. It's going to synchronize with your Outlook. You can just select that event, and it will be able to navigate you to that specific conference room. If that's what the event was, some sort of meeting. So it really wouldn't be a full solution unless you you need to maintain your data. So as part of the work that we did with Atlanta was that we created a data maintenance manual. This is just showing really the table of contents. It's showing you we have different indoors essentials, which is talking about the data, goes through the data model, the geoprocessing tools, the CAD modeling. And then we get into a whole series of things with the indoor process workflow, all of the different steps associated with that. So you can, this is really a, distilled down user guide on how you can implement, indoors. That is, the assumption is that the folks that are, reading through this manual, do have an understanding of what indoors is. I don't believe, it's not written such that if it was someone brand new, that you'd be able to, walk through and do a full implementation. But Esri does provide really good training, and they do have manuals for that as well. But this is for, specifically for the airport. And, it walks them through their specific examples of, how we created this data, as well as managing it. Because we look at change management and the use cases. The use cases, we gave specific examples of, basically replacing the main terminal on the north side because there was a total redesign that happened the second year. So we actually, walk through that process on how we need to update the network, the units, as well as the points of interest. And then some smaller ones if you have some concession changes and things like that. So it goes through the whole gambit of very technical to the very simple changes, as well as overall change management, which is extremely important. It's that communication and identifying and tracking a project that requires changes to the indoors data model early on in the process, even if it's in its infancy, that they are just talking about the plan and they haven't started designing or constructing yet. But the earlier that you can get involved in that process, the better off you're going to be. There's recommendations in there on creating a web application to track those changes. So we can just, add a polygon or add a point and put certain information related to that specific project so that we know where the areas of change are going to be occurring and maybe what the frequency of those changes are. That, it's a large design project, so that's not going to happen for another year or so, but at least we know there's something happening in that area versus like a concession change, which, may be happening next month. So we want to identify that, and that's how we determine what our prioritization is going to be. And we also want to, a recommendation is to create a data repository to support the data. So as this information is coming in, like let's store that in a logical manner, in a directory structure on our network, so that we have a way and these containers that we just go in and maintain the information. So I think I'm coming up on my time here, but I got a couple more slides. Indoors use case exploration. Okay, so we started out by doing that pilot. We went through and developed data for the entire CPTC, which is the Passenger Terminal Complex. you know, a couple different floors, the whole public area, and that's like the main terminal, all the concourses A, B, C, D, and E, as well as the plane train connecting everything. So a lot of data was already created. So now we've started to looking at, you know, different use cases. So there is the ability to create like a public facing solution. Right now they're using a third party for that. But one of the challenges with that is, you know, the updates, you know, providing the information to update that application. And also you don't have full control over that application. So at some point, you know, Atlanta may create a public facing, you know, application to support, you know, the general public in their navigation. And then from an operational or business standpoint, you know, there's a lot of different things that we're investigating right now. There's a properties division that deals with, you know, all types of lease management, you know, which is a huge endeavor. And having that information within the indoors environment is going to be very valuable, as well as security. So we're looking at, you know, security protocols and inspections that they need to do, you know, as well as we go back to, you know, situational awareness and emergency response, you know, those types of different, you know, use case scenarios. From a, you know, an asset management standpoint, we're looking to, you know, implement the indoor solution to help support, you know, work order management, you know, as well as inspection. So using, you know, field maps that is floor aware to do both the inspections as well as any types of, you know, inventories. So like if you're looking at asset inventories, there's you know, an airport is basically a small city. It's got a lot of utility information, you know, HVAC systems, you know, water shutoffs that you need, gas, all of those different things. So getting that data aligned and having that access to that information, you know, from an operations standpoint within the indoors environment is going to help them tremendously. So it's a, you know, ever evolving initiative. So, you know, we're expanding now for this next year, expanding the functionality beyond the CPTC, the terminal complex. And we also, you know, work with Atlanta to develop the rental car garage complex. And, you know, that was part of the training, is having, you know, those folks actually use indoors and actually create the data from scratch. So that was part of the exercise. Next is, you know, capturing and extending the points of interest details. So not only, you know, as we, you know, expand the indoors footprint and floor plans, but the associated points of interest as well as additional points of interest. We're looking at, you know, potentially there's like security cameras, there's doors. You know, I mentioned the utility features like the HVAC units as well as the water shutoffs and the flight information displays, like what you're looking at when you're going to an airport. You know, there's got to be maintenance activities related to all of those different things. So creating those as asset points is, you know, is definitely something on the horizon. Indoor positioning system, you know, we're investigating right now. They do have a acuity lighting system, which has, you know, the IPS technology built within the lighting system. It's extremely accurate. So we're working on a way to get that system actually turned on and tested within the areas of the airport that are, you know, relatively new. But then there is also using the Apple's IPS, you know, which is another solution that, you know, is available throughout the interior complex. Designing and deploying the business applications I talked about, like properties and securities. We've done some proof of concepts and showed functionalities to different departments. So this next year we'll be actually building out those applications and then starting to speak with some of the other divisions as well. Providing documentation and training as this, you know, as it continues to evolve. Implementing, you know, Esri Space Planner as well as the meeting room bookings is extremely important to the airport. Space Planner for obvious reasons, you know, both from on the public facing side, like concessions, as well, you know, as you know, offices as they you know, reconstruct areas and things like that. And meeting room bookings, so to be able to help people navigate to the different conference rooms throughout their complex, there's meeting rooms within the main terminal, as well as the tech center, which is off-site, facility, which is slated for, data creation this year. But to be able to, successfully be able to book those rooms and navigate people to those. A couple of the others would be like to expand the data maintenance manual as these things are getting built out. And just touching base, I mentioned it in the beginning, there's other verticals that Indoors, is extremely valuable. We can see that like in healthcare, hospitals, instead of passengers, that's visitors, right? To be able to navigate, these different huge hospitals that they have. As well as, asset management, moving the medical equipment from point A to point B. That, believe me, that's, that we've heard that those are real challenges in actually keeping track of those, movable, assets. And if you've been in a hospital, unfortunately, recently, you'll see everything is digital these days. I mean, they have, digital displays that they're rolling around during their rounds with all the information right there at their fingertips. Education, there's a couple different ones. So now we're not talking about passengers, we're talking about students. So if we're talking about students, the first thing they, that what they worry about the first day is like, where are all my classes? How do I get to my classes, right? So Indoors can help you navigate through that. As well as like from a local government agency, like courthouses and things like that, the same thing. The large complexes like counties, they're difficult to navigate. So if you created like an Indoors solution, you would help, those people that are going to the courthouse be able to navigate through, and get to that, specific courtroom or whatever the case may be. In all of those cases, once again, asset management on the other side from an operations standpoint plays a huge, value add as well. That was a lot of information. So, if I'm here and available to answer any questions that people might have right now. Here's the contact information for myself as well as David Wright at the airport. So with that, I'd like to open it up.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thanks for the great presentation. It's awesome to see the magnitude of all that data and how you guys are able to manage it. We have probably just another minute here before we got to break out. Got one question here from James Stanley. For the public use within the airport, will there potentially be kiosks or phone apps for the passengers to use to find their way through?
Very good. Very great question. Actually, yes. And the answer is both. Kiosks is one. So that's where you get into the web app. So the kiosk can be set up, throughout the facility to use. And there are kiosks right now if you go through, but they're not really giving you directions to those specific places. As well as the mobile apps. So deploying Indoors, I do have it on my phone. I can navigate around the airport if I was in the airport, or show that in a demo environment. And I think Esri is working on, different methods to, instead of having to download a map package, having, more access through, web services so that it's a lighter lift, and download for those passengers. If you're a frequent flyer as myself and I do American, there is an app out there right now that actually shows you some of that functionality at different airports across the country. But once again, that's from a third party, so the airport really doesn't have as much control. And I think that's one of the values, for the airport is having that control, both for releasing the information to the public, and obviously that would be a subset of what is used from the operational side. Which is a huge value and asset to the organization.
All right, that sounds great, Tom. Thank you very much. And I think we have an exit poll that's going to come up right here. If everyone can knock that out and go ahead and respond there. And Tom, on behalf of the NCAEG board, just want to thank you so much for your presentation. That was great. And I just want to wish everyone a great rest of your conference, and we'll see you guys in the next sessions. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much, all. Take care.